So first of all, there is no I that is not dependent upon past causes. There is no I that is not dependent upon its parts. And there is no I that's not dependent on the mind that calls it that. So the final meaning of emptiness is that there's nothing, these are the words, there is nothing from the side of cup that makes it cup. There's no meaning in cup that doesn't come from the mind. Not one atom, not even an atom, Lama Zopa says. So our trouble is this. As soon as we hear that, we go sailing off into nihilism, and we mistake the ultimate reality of emptiness as being nihilism. Therefore, there is no cup. Therefore, there is no I might as well kill myself. We sort of chuck the baby out with the bathwater. It's a great analogy. We throw out too much. This is the extreme view of nihilism, such that the second we hear there is no I from its own side, there is no I in and of itself, there is no I separate from the mind, there is no I intrinsically, there is no I that isn't dependent upon this and that, there is no inherent I. These are all the terms they say. As soon as we hear that, we can't hear it in the nuanced way, so we go, there is no I. We chuck it out. We chuck out too much. Then we hear Buddha say, there is an I that does exist in dependence upon causes. There is an I that does exist in dependence upon parts. There is an I that does exist in dependence upon the mind, calling it that. And then we get overexcited and we go to the other extreme and we reify it and go, oh, thank God, there's something after all. Grasp. We go too far in that one. So we run between like these two views, eternalism and nihilism, like drunken sailors. It's like platform 9.5, 10, was it 9.5? Harry Potter? I've heard about. So the middle way is the real place between these two when these two come together. Right now they're separate. We run depressed, nihilist, hopeless, nothing, no meaning, no purpose. Everything's empty, doesn't matter anyway. We say it. It's utterly, profoundly wrong. Then we say, oh, dependent arising, there must be something. And then we grasp. We go to the two extremes and we run between these instinctively, primordially. And these two are the philosophical positions. This is the creator one, which is superior to this one. This is nihilism. There's nothing. You might as well kill yourself. That's our materialist view. There's nothing. What's the point? Nothing's worthwhile, you know. So we've got to bring these two together, the two truths. So dependent arising means emptiness. Emptiness means dependent arising, whereas now we think it's the opposite, you know. Okay, let's take a different tack, okay? Look at it differently, another perspective. Let's look at the word. Okay, let's look at the word emptiness, because it completely throws us. I will go, oh, my cup's empty. Now, we know it means, there's no tea there, because that's our language. We know that tea goes in a cup. So I'll say, my cup is empty. So what we're saying is there is something that does exist, a cup, that lacks something else. It means that, doesn't it? There is a cup that lacks tea. We just say, oh, my cup's empty. You look in the room, oh, the room's empty. We'll mean there is a thing that does exist called a room, but then lacks people. That's how we talk, isn't it? It's a comfortable language. Empty. It's empty. You know, I feel so empty. That's a bit different meaning, actually. But forget that. But this one is very comfortable, very practical. So you look in your bank. Oh, God, my bank account's empty. We'll say. We mean empty of dollars, don't we? Okay, so let's rephrase those statements. Let's rephrase those statements. All right. One thing that, when you study Buddhist philosophy, you learn, the very beginning, you learn about the different terms for what exists, because we have to try to work out what exists. So Buddha's got different phenomena, different synonyms for that which exists. One is phenomenon, object, object of knowledge, existent, established base. There's at least 5, I can't remember, there are more. Synonyms for whatever exists, and they've all got different definitions. Okay, so a phenomenon, we're pointing to a thing, aren't we? So a thing, you'd say it's a noun, isn't it? A microphone's a noun, isn't it? Would you agree? String, electric wire's a noun. This is a noun. A cushion is a noun. An eye is a noun. I mean, a person, Robina, is a noun. A clock is a noun. You get my point here? So now that's one point. Now the second point is the mind, its job is to cognize. It's the job of mind is to cognize. Cognize what, Buddha? That which exists, baby. So you have subject. Mind are referred to as subject, and it cognizes something, which is an object. So object here doesn't mean a physical thing. Object here is meaning that which mind cognizes. So if you say, then I would say my cup is empty. So you could argue that my mind is cognizing the fact that my cup is empty of tea. Would you say that, couldn't you? So let's turn what it's cognizing into a noun. Let's turn what it's cognizing into a noun. Are you with me, people? You can hear the language. So that would be called emptiness of tea. Can you hear that? It's abstract, but it's a nounal phrase. It's a noun, isn't it? You can observe the fact that there is no tea in my cup. You can observe the fact that my cup is empty of tea. So the mind needs to have something to grab onto to cognize. So it's called absence of tea. It seems abstract. We wouldn't talk that way. So what your mind is cognizing when I go here with my eyes, and then I deduce that there is no tea here, my mind just cognized the absence of tea in my cup. Can you hear that? Can you hear that? Would you agree that that's purple on this cup? You agree that we call that purple, yeah? So purple is an object of my mind, of my eye consciousness, isn't it? My mind is cognizing a phenomenon called purple. That's a noun, isn't it? Simple. So you agree? Now let's say, what's your name? The green shirt.
Ramesh.
You, darling. What? Ramesh.
Ramesh.
Ramesh. Let's say Ramesh is colorblind. And when we present purple to him, let's say he sees blue, let's say. So, let's say. Now, blue doesn't exist here. We accept that, don't we? So then you could argue to him when he sees this cup, we fix his eyes, and now his eyes are fixed. Normally he sees purple. Whenever we present, normally he sees pink. What did I say? Blue. Normally, because his eyes are wrong, he perceives blue when purple's presented. Well, it's not blue, is it? Conventionally, this is not blue. It's purple. Do you agree, people? So we've got to help him see the truth, isn't it? So we fix his eyes. Okay? So now we'll show him a purple cup. Now, you would think that he now sees purple, wouldn't you? Oh, but he doesn't first. He'll get the shock of his life. He'll go, oh my God, it's not blue. And why would he say that? Why would he say that? He's expecting blue. Every time he's seen purple, blue appears to him. So all his life he's trained in believing a lie, hasn't he? Would you accept that, Ramesh? You can hear that, can't you? He's believed in the lie. He's believed in a lie. So he's programmed with believing in the lie. So the truth is revealed to him, but he gets the shock of his life. He'll go, oh my God, it's not blue. Wouldn't he sort of say that? Can you hear that point? Let's say he believes there's $1,000 in his bank. Totally believes $1,000. He's been saving it. He believes $1,000 in his bank. It's as real as if it's there. And he opens the bank and he discovers there's a zero there. Believe me, he won't say, oh, that's interesting, no dollars in my bank. No, he'll say, where's my $1,000? He'll get a shock of his life. Won't he? Won't he? Won't he? Can you hear the point? So what he just cognized is the absence of $1,000. What he just cognized is the absence of blue. It sounds abstract, but it's very vividly true. He saw that zero triggered the recognition that his $1,000 are not there. So the $1,000 not there is called the absence of $1,000. Can you hear that? Can you hear that? Let's say Earth leaves me, and I come home one day and there's no Earth. You get me? What I'm observing every day in the house is the absence of Earth, aren't I? You maybe have never heard of him. You come home, you don't see the absence of Earth because you've never heard of Earth. But I will notice the absence of Earth. Do you understand what I'm saying? That's the emptiness of Earth. So the absence of something is very vivid when the mind sees it. So the Buddha's saying this. For eons and eons and eons and eons, we've been grasping at a fantasy eye that doesn't exist. That's all. Just hear those words. A fantasy eye that doesn't exist. An independent eye. An eye that doesn't depend upon causes. An eye that doesn't depend upon parts. And an eye that doesn't depend upon the mind calling it that. Never mind, just call it a fantasy eye. There isn't an eye there. Like the blue is a fantasy. Like, the dollars are a fantasy. They don't exist. But because we wanted them to exist, we believe they exist, we've expected they exist, and we've believed it for a billion eons, this eye, then when the first moment in the depths of your mind, in subtle concentration, after years and years of hard work and purification and practice, one day, the moment will come, you'll have a direct cognition of the absence of that fantasy eye. It's very lovely. So what Lama Zopa says, from the first moment you finally, because you fixed your mind, you see the truth, you first see the absence of the blue. So here we fixed our mind and we finally are going to see emptiness for the first time. What that literally means is that for the first time you will observe that there isn't that I that you thought was there. It isn't there. And what that means is you've just observed, cognized, perceived the absence of the fantasy I. It's a dynamic. It's not just, this is where the biggest mistake about emptiness. Oh, it's like saying, oh, there's no dollars in the bank. It's all empty. Think about this before I go back to Lama Zopa. Think about this. Think about, can you hear the difference between the two phenomena? One phenomena is called $0, and one phenomenon is called the absence of $1,000. Can you hear those two phenomena? Are they not very different? They're extremely different. $0 is like nihilism. Oh, well, there's no I, what the hell? But the absence of $1,000 is way more tasty, way more intense, because it's the absence of what you thought was there. Seeing zero is easy, but the absence of what you thought was there is a much more powerful phenomenon, and that's the truth, because you've now finally realised there was never $1,000, let's say. It was a fantasy you made up.
It's an absence of illusion.
Well, don't get too carried away, Ramesh. That sounds very lovely. You've been reading the texts. Don't go there. I don't want you to say that now. Do you see because it's like we say these words, we love these words, illusions, all this stuff. Don't say that, if you don't mind. You can say what you like, but I don't want to say that. I want to keep it grounded. Are you hearing me? Are you hearing me? You're right, of course. Don't say it like that. So, what Lama Zopa says is when you finally, at the subtle level of your concentration, in subtle concentration from years and years, if not life after life, of hard work, of analysing dependent arising, because that's the reasoning you use that triggers the insight, that what the fear is so intense, it's unbelievable. For two responses. The greatest yogi has bliss and joy, that finally you see that thing you always believed in has never, doesn't, and could never exist, and you're liberated. It's like joyful. It's like finding $1 trillion. You're blissed out. The other response, which is also pretty intense, is unbelievable fear. Not the fear, he said, of the ordinary I losing something, but the fear that there isn't that I, that your eons of lives and all your experiences have been based on. He said it's a very powerful kind of unbelievable fear. But it's good. And that's why they say, Rinpoche says when you meditate, you might get a moment of a flash of fear. He says, you don't resist it. You go in there. Because you'll never lose your I. You'll never lose your relative I. You'll never disappear. It's not possible. So there's nothing to be afraid of. So you've got to let it come and walk into it, not resist it. That'll just block your realization of emptiness, he says. So emptiness is what I'm meaning is by the word emptiness, a shorthand, is the absence of something you thought was there that isn't. Nothing there is nihilism, but the absence of something you thought was there is very, very different. It's rich and nuanced. And that's why if you get this understanding of the two truths together, you can never become nihilistic. So as Holiness says, in the Heart Sutra, when Buddha says, form is emptiness, emptiness is form is nothing other than emptiness is nothing other than form. Why he says form there? Because it's the example, it's the first of the different categories of phenomena. The Heart Sutra just lists all the categories of phenomena of the universe according to Buddhism. And the first group is the 5 aggregates, and the first of those 5 is called form. But anything could be there. You could say, I am empty. Emptiness is I. I is nothing other than emptiness, and emptiness is nothing other than I. And what that means literally is this. Okay, do we accept that there is a bank account? And do we accept that there's the absence of $1,000? Yeah? So where does the absence of $1,000 exist? It's not a tricky question, it's a literal one. In the bank account. Where else where did you look for the $1,000? Where did you go to look?
I looked in
the bank account. Good. And where did you find the absence of $1,000?
The same bank account.
There you go. Can you hear that? So emptiness of $1,000 is a real phenomenon that does exist somewhere. We go, oh, empty, it's all empty, there's nothing, it's all empty, there's no anything anywhere. That's just not, it's absurd, it's nonsense. If I think there's $5 in my pocket, I will put my hand in my pocket to look for it. I wouldn't look over there in the cushion, how stupid. I'll put my hand in my pocket and I'll go, oh, what did I just discover? The absence of $5, didn't I? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? So where does the absence of $5 exist? in the pocket. So where does the emptiness of the inherent I exist? On the aggregates, the parts. So you can never have nihilism. There's no such thing as no I, the way we hear it wrongly. So there's nothing to be afraid of. So as Lama Zopa says this, when you've realised there is no inherent I there, it's as if there is no I, but there is an I. But what does exist, dependent arising, is so subtle, it's as if it's an illusion. It's as if it doesn't exist. So, on the one hand, there is not an atom of I from the side of the components, from the side of the aggregates. And when you realise that, it's as if there's no I. But there is an I. But what does exist is so subtle, it's as if there isn't an I. It's as if it is an illusion. So these two truths come together. And this is the middle way. And then when you know dependent arising, you know emptiness. And when you know emptiness, you know dependent arising. So it's bringing the two truths together. Right now they're separate because we're deluded. So bring them together. That's why the most marvellous thing to do, as Tsongkhapa says, is whenever you think about dependent arising, which gives us the feeling there is something after all, cling, you think, ha-ha, Robina, that means emptiness. And every time you think emptiness, instead of becoming nihilistic, that tells you it means dependent arising. And these two slowly come together. And then when you're finally a Buddha, you will cognize simultaneously dependent arising and emptiness. They are the same. They will be cognized simultaneously. Until then, even the greatest yogis in their meditation can cognize emptiness. And then out of there, and bopping around in the universe, as Tsongkhapa says, in songs of hymns of experience, they see phenomena appear to them like an illusion, existing not from their own side, but nevertheless they still function. So there is no cup from its own side. You can't find a cup from its own side, but it still holds my tea, baby, and I can drink from it. That's the tricky put these two together. And the crucial piece is where you start to define things. You've got to define what its function is. And when you understand that function is a massively important point. Because emptiness doesn't, merely labelled doesn't mean, oh, well, you can call anything anything. I can call this a knife. No. What's a knife? You've got to define it. A knife is a long piece of metal that cuts things. Well, baby, this is not a long piece of metal that cuts things. But it's a cup. What's a cup? The flat-bottom container that holds my tea. That still does that job, even though you cannot pinpoint it. That's what they're saying. You can't find anything inherent there. You can't find anything that doesn't come from the mind, not to mention the parts or the causes. So it sounds like tricky. This is not just tricky yogi talk. This is the experiences of the yogi, the truth. So, of course, the point of all this is, when we get this, bring these two together, it kind of flattens the mind in the sense that the mind becomes more brave, more courageous, less up and down like a yo-yo, less ridiculous, more clear, more wise, more courageous, more blissful, more radiant, more expansive, until you fill the universe, And then your eye is as big as the world. There's no longer a separate sense of I. That's the final one to go, which seems pretty schizophrenic to us. The main result of having this delusion is with all these millions of separate eyes all walking around, So when you fully develop this and added bodhicitta to the mix, it's as if your eye is as big as the universe, encompasses everybody. There's literally not a separate sense of I, literally. And the mind is blissful and radiant and clear and beyond delusions and infinitely wise and infinitely compassionate. That's what Buddha says is our natural state. And he's speaking literally, not fantasy. I'm looking forward to it.